Meghan is not invited to my upcoming Santa Barbara event. I have no involvement with the Epstein matter. Prince Andrew and Meghan do. She made an advance toward me. I did not respond.
It was supposed to be just another elegant charity evening on the California coast. Instead, it became the night a single sentence quietly dropped into the room, shattering the illusion surrounding Meghan Markle and leaving Prince Harry blindsided by a truth he may never have seen coming. Because when Kevin Costner speaks, Hollywood listens. And this time, what he said didn't just echo through Santa Barbara. It traveled across the Atlantic, slipped through palace walls, and landed at the very heart of the royal institution. Suddenly, a story that had been whispered in private circles for years was no longer staying quiet. The evening itself looked perfect on camera: soft lights across a private estate, expensive suits, evening gowns, and cameras flashing. The 1805 Live benefit in Santa Barbara was one of those quiet power gatherings where deals are never publicly announced, but careers are made, alliances are formed, and reputations are silently measured. This wasn't just a charity event. This was a room full of people who decide who belongs in Hollywood, and who doesn't. And that's why what Kevin Costner said that night mattered so much. According to multiple insiders present, Costner made it very clear that Meghan Markle would not be invited to future private gatherings connected to events held at his estate. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a sentence. Calm. Direct. Final. The kind of sentence that doesn't sound emotional. It sounds decided. And in Hollywood, when someone like Kevin Costner quietly draws a line, people notice. The room didn't erupt. No one argued. There was no confrontation. But the energy changed instantly. Conversations slowed. People exchanged looks, because in Hollywood, exclusion doesn't happen by accident. It happens by consensus. And suddenly, people began wondering what had happened behind the scenes that the public didn't yet know about. For years, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle had been trying to build something very specific in California. Not just a celebrity lifestyle, but a power base, media deals, production companies, speaking engagements, influence. They weren't just attending events like this. They were trying to become permanent players in that world. And events like the Santa Barbara benefit were exactly the kind of rooms they needed access to. Rooms where billion-dollar decisions are made over quiet conversations and private dinners. So when Kevin Costner quietly closed that door, it wasn't just about a party invitation. It was about access, influence, and acceptance. Prince Harry was there that night, on stage, smiling, shaking hands, accepting applause. On camera, everything looked normal. But inside the room, people noticed something else. Distance. Not rudeness. Not hostility. Just distance. Short conversations. Polite nods. Controlled interactions. The kind of social coldness that exists in powerful circles where no one says what they really think, but everyone understands what's happening. And that's when the whispers started. A few days after the event, a comment began circulating, quietly at first, through media circles and industry insiders. A comment allegedly made by Kevin Costner, linking Meghan Markle's name to something that made people in both Hollywood and London deeply uncomfortable. The shadow of the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. No one was making public accusations. No official statements. But in elite circles, you don't need a press conference to create panic. You just need the wrong name mentioned next to another. Suddenly, what looked like a social snub began to look more like a warning. And that's when this story stopped being Hollywood gossip and became a royal problem. Because the Epstein scandal had already caused enormous damage to the British monarchy. Prince Andrew's association with Jeffrey Epstein didn't just make headlines. It created a crisis that took years to contain. Titles were removed. Public duties ended. His reputation was permanently damaged. Inside Buckingham Palace, that scandal was treated like a fire that had barely been put out. So when Meghan Markle's name began appearing anywhere near that same conversation, even as a rumor, palace advisors reportedly began monitoring the situation immediately. Because the monarchy understands one thing better than anyone. Reputation is survival. And once a narrative starts spreading internationally, it doesn't matter whether it's proven. The damage begins the moment people start talking. The timing couldn't have been worse. King Charles was dealing with health concerns. Catherine, Princess of Wales, had stepped back from public duties for recovery. Fewer senior royals were appearing in public. The institution already looked thinner, more exposed than usual. The last thing the palace needed was another scandal narrative, especially one connected to a shadow that had already shaken public trust. So behind palace walls, advisors began discussing something not seriously considered in years. The Titles Deprivation Act of 1917. An old law, created during World War I, that allows the monarch, under specific circumstances, to remove royal titles from individuals whose actions are considered damaging to the crown or the nation. For over a century, it had mostly remained in the background of British constitutional law, rarely mentioned, almost never used. But now, according to insiders, it was being looked at again. Not publicly, not officially, but seriously. And that's when this situation became much bigger than a Hollywood fallout story. Because now, three worlds were colliding at once. Hollywood, where powerful figures were quietly stepping back. The palace, where legal advisors were quietly reviewing old laws. And right in the middle of it all, Prince Harry. As all of this unfolded, something else began to change, and people noticed. Prince Harry started appearing more and more alone. At the Invictus Games, at charity events, during humanitarian trips, he was still doing the work that once made him one of the most respected members of the royal family. Supporting veterans, visiting humanitarian projects, walking through minefields in Angola, just as his mother, Princess Diana, once did. And in those moments, he looked like the old Harry again, the prince people remembered. The soldier, the humanitarian, the royal with purpose. But every time he appeared, the same question followed. Where does he belong now? Because his life had become a bridge between two worlds, the royal institution he left behind and the Hollywood empire he tried to build. And now, according to insiders on both sides of the Atlantic, both of those worlds were starting to shift. Hollywood was becoming cautious. The palace was becoming nervous. And Prince Harry was standing in the middle, watching both doors slowly begin to close. So the real question isn't just what Kevin Costner said that night. The real question is this. Did one quiet sentence at a charity event trigger a chain reaction that could reshape the future of the Sussex brand, shake Hollywood alliances, and force the royal family to consider decisions they never wanted to revisit? Because if that's true, then Santa Barbara wasn't just a charity event. It was the night everything started changing. And that's where the story takes an even darker turn. Because while the palace quietly reviewed old laws and Hollywood created distance, the real pressure began building somewhere no one could see. Inside the Sussex brand itself. Because brands don't collapse in public first. They collapse in boardrooms, in contracts, and in phone calls that suddenly stop being returned. Behind closed doors in Los Angeles, executives and media strategists were no longer asking how big Prince Harry and Meghan Markle could become. They were asking something far colder. Had the Sussex name become a risk? In the entertainment industry, reputation isn't personal, it's financial. Every major deal, especially multi-million-dollar agreements, comes with a morality clause. A quiet legal provision that allows companies to step away if a public figure becomes associated with controversy. It's not emotional. It's business. And when controversy begins to emerge from multiple directions, Hollywood whispers, royal tension, legal discussions, companies start calculating. Because the California empire Prince Harry and Meghan Markle built was never just about fame. It was about positioning. Netflix deals. Media production. Public speaking. Partnerships. Influence. They weren't trying to be celebrities. They were trying to become a power brand, somewhere between royalty and Hollywood. But that strategy only works if both sides still want you. And now, for the first time, insiders were whispering that both sides were becoming uncertain, at the same time. In Britain, the conversation was becoming constitutional. In Hollywood, it was becoming financial. And in the middle of it all, Prince Harry's public appearances began telling a different story. At the Invictus Games, he wasn't a producer or celebrity. He was the founder of something meaningful. In Angola, walking through a minefield like Princess Diana, the world saw something powerful again. Not a media personality, not a Hollywood figure, but a prince. And that's when a new question began spreading quietly. If everything falls apart, where does Prince Harry go? Because legally, constitutionally, and personally, his position is unlike anyone else's. He is still a prince. Still the son of a king. Still part of the royal bloodline. But he is also tied to an American media world that depends entirely on public image. If Hollywood turns cold and the palace turns cautious, he isn't just facing a PR crisis. He's facing an identity crisis. And people noticed something else. The more the controversy grew, the more Prince Harry appeared alone. Not dramatically. Just enough to be noticed. And in royal history, optics are never accidental. Appearances tell stories that statements never will. Some observers began asking whether Prince Harry was quietly repositioning himself. More military events. More humanitarian work. Less Hollywood. Less red carpets. Subtle shifts, but in royal strategy, subtle often means significant. Because the monarchy survives by one rule. When threatened, it chooses itself. Always. And that's why discussions around the Titles Deprivation Act mattered. Not because it would definitely happen, but because it meant the palace was preparing for worst-case scenarios. Meanwhile, in Hollywood, the shift became visible, but still quiet. Fewer invitations. Fewer appearances. Fewer shared rooms with powerful figures. Because in Hollywood, exile doesn't look like exile. It looks like silence. So was this just a misunderstanding? A personality clash? Or was that one sentence from Kevin Costner actually a signal of something much bigger? Because if Hollywood doors are closing, and the palace is preparing, then this story isn't just about a comment. It's about a prince at a crossroads. An institution protecting itself. And a California empire that may not be as untouchable as it once seemed. And if that's true, this story isn't ending. It's just beginning.